Hey guys, it's Will from Next Performance. I'm here with Jamie from Melbourne Strength Culture. And
how you doing?
Once again, we're going to do a little road to ProRaw like I did last year, a series of videos, but this time I thought we'd start it further out and we will go deeper into what I'm actually doing. So diving into the programming, thought processes behind exercises, volumes, intensities, different things that are going on. Jamie's writing my programming right now as he gets record breakers. And so, yeah, I thought it was good to get a breakdown on that because I get a lot of questions on why I'm doing things a certain way. And people like to, I guess, know that so they can apply it to their programming. It's good to hear. You don't really hear about it from people very often, why they're actually doing things. It's just like, this is what I'm doing. So, yeah, anyway, I've just come out of comp. This is my first actual training week. I did my first day on Monday, a couple of days ago. I had a week off, which was our travel week back from America to here, which I was definitely not training. I was very stuffed from comp, and not only that, but from flying and the stress of getting back in routine, a bit of jet lag, all that stuff. It's added up. So it definitely put me out of action for a week, but back into it straight away. We picked up on a couple of, I guess, weaknesses or whatever you want to call them from comp. Things that I need to improve is probably a better way to say it. And yeah, do you want to expand what your thoughts were post comp on what I need to work on?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the things that we identified came prior to the comp, so we probably picked them up in that sort of probably the block before we left for America. We identified that we need to find a way to increase your squat volume because you were struggling to handle really anything over 3 or 4 sets per week with the lower back and the hip and the knee. So that was probably one of the biggest things we identified, and we found a way obviously to get stronger alongside just getting bigger in general. We knew that was going to happen, but that's probably one thing that we've identified for this next process into ProRaw. Try and find some strategies to increase squat volume. And then also coming alongside going up a weight class, we know that we need to probably build some muscle. I think that's a bit of a misconception and something that we probably can discuss in this. In terms of weaknesses in general, I don't think you're a very well-rounded athlete, and I think most people can see that. You've got a lot of muscle, which is a key point for anybody that wants to be successful in powerlifting. We know that we have a couple little niggles and injuries that have come not so much out of the comp itself, but just out of the process of traveling and all that sort of stuff. We have a little bit of a shitty shoulder that we do have to manage. But although it was improving, which was really, really good. But I think the biggest thing coming out of the comp itself is just what most people will experience is that you need to get away from that highly specific, high-intensity training style, which makes you successful at comp, but doesn't really make you successful as a powerlifter in the long run, because you just run into the same batch of issues that everybody runs into, which is overuse, sort of niggly type things at joints. And obviously we can't really handle too much training volume in those highly specific, high intensity expression of strength exercises. So we're in our first sort of like intro block into the process of ProRaw. So we've gone very, very non-specific. We've pulled away from some of those heavy stuff, as most people should do. But I think it's a bit of a misconception that you don't really need to do that with barbell lifts. There's nothing wrong with stepping away completely. Or not completely, depending on the person. Obviously, it's contextually dependent, how long the break is, how long you want to be non-specific for. Understanding that the longer you are non-specific for probably means that you need to spend more time on the other end getting the skill and expression back of the barbell lifts. But we've got plenty of time. I think we've got about 5 months, 17 weeks or 19 weeks or something. So yeah, we've got plenty of time to play with.
I think the weaknesses thing is definitely a huge misconception, especially in new coaches and stuff like that. On my triceps a week because my lockout and bench, or this is weak because of this portion of the lift is slow or whatever. But as I've learned, there's always going to be a weak point in the lift. There's always going to be a weak point. There's going to be a point where you are slow, and the better lifters all have weak points as well. It's not like they're just blasting it. So you just have to accept that. I really like to just out of comps with my lifters, just hit really non-specific, like you said, get away, just find exercises that don't beat them up, allow them to do work without stressing the structures. So that very similar process in how you do. And
yeah, so for the most part, just so people at home, and I think this is a really good education point for any coach out there in anything, but in terms of strength, there's a whole multitude of factors that control strength and our output and what makes somebody stronger than somebody else. But for the most part, so we can talk about like genetics, fast twitch fiber breakdown, like the percentage of that, like our rate, like our central nervous system drive, and like how that is built within like a genetic standpoint. But then in terms of what we can affect as a coach or an athlete, there really is only three things that we have control over. And number one is like your efficiency of movement, your efficiency of your biomechanics. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, powerlifting is not the three lifts. They're not that difficult to grasp. If you've got a good coach and if you're a newer lifter, those key rocks, those big rocks as we like to describe them, is generally picked up very, very quickly. So the biomechanical sort of thing, it's quite a low-hanging fruit. Secondary to that, we have how well we can train our brain to efficiently recruit the muscle we have. So our sort of like neuromuscular sort of efficiency. And then number three would be how much muscle we have. And that is the same for everybody. They're the three factors that we can affect as a coach in terms of progressing strength in the long run. And it's no different for somebody like you. So it would be easy for somebody to say, hey, Will Crozier is fucking jacked. He's jacked as all hell. He's more jacked than anybody else. But really it's like, well, hang on. We're not in moving up a weight class. We have a lot more muscle to build in order to be competitive at the 125s. Yeah, we can sit at the 110s and be 6% body fat the comp day. However, you've grown that. You've hit the ceiling of that class for a same day weigh. We can't get any more muscle for a same day.
You've cut one of them out.
Yeah, exactly. So we're really on the limit of the 110s, but opening up to the 115s, obviously if we go through a big surplus phase, we're going to carry a little bit extra fat because it just comes along with being in the surplus. But the goal should still be to get as jacked as possible in the 125 class. So for us now, that's what we've identified. We need to build muscle. And the only way you can build muscle is progressively overload your volume and your tension across really non-specific lifts. If you go too specific, you're just going to bash joints.
Yeah, and this hypertrophy work also comes with other benefits in that, like you said, lower loads. So you're getting the recovery of those passive structures, those tendons, ligaments, joints, blah, blah, blah. So you're getting with the growth. You're training new ranges. So like movement variability, we're opening up movement options or whatever. I can get less injured. I can learn to move in different ways, which pros and cons come with that, but it's a different conversation. And then, so there's a lot of other little side benefits come to it. So yeah, I don't think you can really get to a point where you're so jacked that you just
muscles always is the driver of strength. I'm sorry, but once you've picked up your skill acquisition of the big three, it doesn't matter who you are. Get more jacked, you'll be stronger. So that's the main goal of the next probably 3 or 4 months is really just get big Bill Crozier bigger.
Can't wait.
Which will be fun.
Yeah, for sure. But But how are we going about that? Because obviously, like looking at this program, it's a fair bit. I would say I think people would be surprised how little volume overall there is compared to what most people would think a bodybuilding program or whatever you want to call it would look like. But as I've explained to many people, like you don't just recover from training, you've got to adapt from training as well. And you only need as much as you need. You don't need to just do as much as possible. It's not a goal of who can do the most work, even when it is bodybuilding. Yeah, well, I think just in programming in general, something that we try to identify with good programs is that in the same way that you would taper your volume down out into comp, into a peak, you need to do the same thing as you enter new phases of training. You can't just, it's really easy to understand why we taper volume down into comp because it allows us to recover better. It allows us, it's not a big shunt in volume. It just drops off.
It allows us to progressively get better at executing skill, because that's what's going to allow us to express the biggest strength on the day. The same thing should happen outside of a comp. You can't just go from the lowest volume that you had in the month in your highest peak, and then just go straight up and then hit an extra 30, 40 sets per week, because your body's just not ready to handle that much volume. And that's a massive spike in your workload. And as we know, with the risk factors for injuries, that's probably the biggest risk factor there is to an injury. So this 4-week block that we're currently in will be the lowest volume of our volume phases as we start to build back up into proper volume training. So we've got 4 days a week. It's pretty much just 2 lower days and 2 upper days. And then we identified when we were overseas some key things that we wanted to really bring up. We want to play with sumo deadlifts. You've said in the past that it's felt really good, but you've just never really given it enough time to sort of get into it.
Enough love, because my convention has always been so strong that it's always been my strong point. So why would I potentially risk giving away my strong point? You know what I mean? And there are arguments for that, but
but that's one thing that we identified that we maybe want to give a little bit of time to. So we've got a little bit of sumo deadlifts in the day 4 there, but for the most part, we identified that bench press can come up a long way, because we're going up a big weight class. Compared to your squat and your deadlift, your bench press probably has a little bit extra to give. And we saw that with a 10 kilo PR with what we did in America. So I'm confident that we can build that up a little more. So we've definitely got a lot of chest hypertrophy work. That's something that we want to bring up. Bring the pecs up. You identified it as a smaller muscle group in your bodybuilding days. Compared to some of the other, like your legs and your glutes and all that sort of stuff. It's something that I think we could probably put a little bit more muscle on going up the weight class. So we've got some typical just pec flies and all that sort of stuff. And we're going to leave that in as we go through. And obviously we're going to layer that with more compound-based work as we build up these volume phases. Probably sticking with more longer range of motion. So flatter back bench presses, incline bench presses, and dumbbell presses will probably be the big driver for that. Yeah. And then in terms of the lower body, the sumo deadlift was one thing that we just want to play around with and give a little bit of attention to. And then, as I said at the very start, we want to try and find some strategies that let you do more squat volume. So we've identified the belt squat as potentially something that could be beneficial for you. So we're trying that. I know at Zero, they just got a new belt squat. So we'll see how the body responds to that, how the knees and the hips and all that sort of stuff can handle that. How's it feeling so far?
I haven't really chucked on any weight heavy enough to test, but it's I think it'll be fine. I just need to. It's just a new thing. I don't know. I just need to find my position in that, but I think it'll be fine. And
then also we're trying some non-specific squat. So we're going to use a high bar or an SSB bar in the long run. Probably both of them will be heels elevated to try and get a little bit more depth, a little bit more quad activation in that bottom position, and build the legs up through a longer range of motion. So we've completely pulled out competition bench, and we've completely pulled out your competition squat, because really deadlifting away. We're put a bit more focus on sumo. We still have some conventionals in there, a couple sets after sumo, just to make sure that we are still getting some stimulus for some high intensity there. But for the most part, we've pulled out the big main 3 lifts, and we've introduced more joint-friendly, longer range of motion, lower intensity, lower weight, to try and cause some different adaptations for muscle growth, because ultimately that's what's going to get you bigger in the end of the day, being able to handle more volume and keep yourself injury-free. So we'll probably run this block for 4 weeks, as we discussed, and then from here, we'll progress into more and more volume phases, which will be fun. Get some calories in, boy.
Yeah, and if hopefully by that point the weight's up and all that's heading in the right direction as well. And my plan for these videos is we'll do one probably monthly to start and just talk about it, because the blocks will be about that long, I'm guessing, and depending on how things go. And then we'll talk about what went well, what didn't go so well, how we're planning forward from here. And then as we approach comp, we'll probably get a little bit more frequent. But I think it'll be a really good insight for people. Definitely.
I think following along a high class athlete, you can learn a lot in terms of how they model sort of what's going on. So I think it'll be very beneficial.
Yeah, and then if anybody has any questions for these, shoot us a message and I'll either answer them in like comments or whatever, or we'll try and tackle it in other videos. But if we get enough questions, we can do separate videos. But yeah, so that's all really. If like I said, if people have questions, shoot them through. But until then, thanks for the chat, and thanks for
thank you very much.
so well. I'll catch you later.